you're sitting on these passion projects or these ideas, and you look around you and realize, okay, it's not happening, so I have to make it happen myself.
Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vella Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vella Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the Smart Talk series. I'm Melissa Vella Williamson. This season, our focus is on the future of mass communication. Today, I'm joined by Ernie Zuniga. Ernie spent nearly 30 years in TV news and sports until last May when he surprised many viewers and friends by walking away from morning news. Since then, he has stayed very busy, trying his hand at podcasting and going all in on the digital talk show he created 6 years ago inside his own car called Pickup Lines. Welcome, Ernie.
Hi, Melissa. Great to be with you.
Well, you should be a little more rested than your morning news days, Ernie. So we're just going to dive right into this conversation because I'm excited to talk to you. Tell us more about your background and what your career focus is today.
Very good. Well, I appreciate it. Grew up in Victoria, a couple of hours away from San Antonio to the southeast. And since about the age of 10, now I was one of those kids that knew exactly what I wanted to do at a pretty young age. That was the first time I got behind a microphone and heard myself talk and in a public setting and just fell in love with it. It was at a Little League baseball game. And so I thought, well, how can I combine those two passions together? And realizing that I had little to no talent playing baseball, I figured, well, I can talk about it. And so the goal became then to be a sportscaster. And the joke is that, all throughout elementary and middle school and probably even high school, all my report cards, back then they were handwritten on real cardboard. The teacher would say, Ernie is a great student, but he talks too much. And I said, you know what? You're right. One day I'm going to find a job where I get paid to talk. And the rest is history.
Yeah, I think most of the people probably listening to this got that same mark and feedback on their report card. Melissa is great and she's very bright, but she talks too much and speaks up too much in class.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to stop talking. So I said, you know what? I'm going to figure out a way to make a living out of it.
Absolutely. I know you have kids, Ernie, and so do I. And I was just telling my daughter today on the drive to school that, hey, you know what you're called weird for and is annoying to people is exactly what you'll probably get paid for in the future. So don't worry about it one bit, Amelia.
Very nice.
Well, let's talk about your show, Pickup Lines. How does the show format work?
Well, I wish I could say, that I sat down somewhere and just studied this for years and created it and had it all figured out years ago. But the reality is, it's about 2018, I believe, is the earliest I can remember back that I started doing it. And it just happened organically one afternoon because I worked mornings for all those years doing the news. I was always available to pick up my kids from school in the afternoon. I have twins. They're now in 8th grade, but 6 years ago, they were in elementary school. And so one afternoon, I was just sitting in my car because you have to arrive, as you probably know, you have to arrive to the school like 30, 45 minutes early just to get a decent spot in the line. So your kids aren't waiting out in the heat, after school gets out. And so I was there, 4 or 5 days a week. And I just had all this idle time on my hands. And I realized I didn't really want to read a book or watch a movie in my car or whatever. And I said, you know what? I'm going to turn on Facebook Live because we always did that when I did the news. And the audience for what I was doing was far greater than anything I could have ever conceived or dreamed of in my wildest dreams. And then eventually my wife joined me in the car when she stopped working for a little while, and the audience grew even more. And my wife would get recognized in public from being on Facebook Live with me. And so eventually I said, we got to call this something. We got to keep doing this. And we got to call it something. I said, as far as I know, this is the only show on earth that originates, it's live in a real pickup line at a real school. And so, not because it's not a dating show, it's not a dating show. I said, I'm actually sitting in a pickup line at school. I said, so I'm going to call it Pickup Lines. And my wife went back to work, a while back. And I knew when I rebooted the show here about 9 months ago, I knew I didn't want to do it by myself. And so then that's when the idea came up to bring public figures and guests and CEOs and other people like that into the car with me. And that brings us to where we are pretty much today.
I mean, yes and no, because I actually saw how that really developed over time organically, as you said. And
Yeah.
kudos to you for jumping on something that you're like, there seems to be a little bit of an idea spark here. And I think this could be something. And then you actually see the feedback from your fans and you're like, well, I think they really like it. And heck, maybe they're all in their cars waiting to pick up kids too,
Yeah.
especially during the pandemic when things were
Right.
all kind of upside down for a while.
Well, that's exactly what it was. There was a shared experience. I realized a lot of people would tell me they're like, "Oh, I'm in my car too," and "Oh my gosh, I'm at this school," or "I'm at this high school," whatever. And I'll tell you another reason that I really have always loved this format is because I grew up with like Johnny Carson and Larry King and people like that did these long form, hour long, 30-minute interview shows. The Tonight Show obviously is a little different than it is now with Jimmy Fallon, but I grew up studying these people, the hosts, the way they conducted themselves on air, and the way they interviewed people. And I must have interviewed two or three, I don't know, 1,000 people over the years doing the morning news. But those interviews were always 2, 3, 4 minutes if you're lucky, maybe five. And I just felt robbed when we were done and they were leaving the studio. I'm like, I wish I had more time. And I've always enjoyed the long form interview format. And I feel like as much as the news business has changed and the advent of social media and the evolution of that, to me, what still remains true, and there's still an appetite for storytelling. And I have a lot of respect for people who do it well. And so that's kind of my niche, if you will, with pickup lines is it's just sitting in a car, not in a TV studio. Everybody knows what it's like to sit in a car, right? And talk. It's a shared, you know, experience. And so far, fingers crossed, I've had some success with it, and people have been, yourself included, have been very, very supportive.
You're welcome. And I know that my clients have had a great time really trying that with you. And that's what I was encouraging prospective interviewees for you to consider, Ernie. I'm like, look, this is a little different. We're
Right.
going to need a certain type of personality from the organization, someone who's comfortable in their skin, someone who can really adapt to that more intimate because it is closer. But you know
Right.
what? TV studios, that's always awkward seating anyway, right? You're really close to each other.
Well, I mean, our studio, was 60, 68 degrees,
Yeah.
and the lights are about, you can touch them from where you're standing. They're about 2, 3 feet above your head and they're burning hot. You've got 5 giant cameras that are probably about 6 feet tall, staring at you. You have other people behind the scenes moving around, and I've got a producer in my ear talking to me, and you're on live television and you're on the clock. And I know that you've got 2.5 minutes left, 2 minutes left, 90 seconds left, and we've barely got the first question. So
Yeah.
I've been asked to do this show in a TV studio, and I have resisted because I believe very strongly in the car that it is disarming, it's comfortable, it's more relaxed, and I think whether consciously or subconsciously, that people open up more, and it just makes for a better show.
Yes. And just to be clear for all you listeners who have not seen the show, Ernie's not driving while this is happening. He's
Never.
parked.
There's one time there was an exception when I was in a parking lot, and I blocked a UPS or a FedEx truck, and the driver was not very happy with me. And I probably still had about 20 minutes left to go in the show, and I realized there's no way I can sit here for 20 minutes. So I called an audible live. And fortunately, we were in the backside of a parking lot, and so I moved the car probably about like the length of 3 or 4 parking spaces, and put the car in a place where I wasn't blocking anybody.
You're like, everyone, hold on.
Yes, literally took a time out so that I could see the road. And then when I was done, I put the car in park and then held my hands up to show everybody, hey, I'm not driving anymore.
All good, all good. Well, no,
Yeah.
I love that. I appreciate that because sometimes we do see social media influencers or whatnot, people just going live or streaming and they're driving. And you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
no,
okay.
no, not me.
Not you. No, I can attest to that. I've been there. I've
Yeah.
seen it, everybody. But I really like that more comfortable format and taking your time with people because some people just need a little time to warm up. It's
Right.
intimidating.
Yeah, some people, I mean, as you and I both know, might be a little more long-winded, myself included sometimes, or you're right. You need 3, 5 minutes just to get settled and get comfortable. I mean, I think the car is casual, but yeah, you're getting into somebody else's car, or maybe, and in some cases, they may be, I've never met them. And so you're getting into the front seat of my car and we're gonna do a live broadcast. I mean, I can see where it might take somebody a few minutes to get settled in. So I always tell people I plan for about 30 minutes. I've done 40 minutes before with someone. I've done 20 minutes before. It really is. That's the beauty of this format. I can dictate the time and there's never a commercial to go to and we have fun with it.
Yeah, I really like that about original content creation is that you can really design how it is packaged and how it's created. And I love that about what you're doing, Ernie. And this natural evolution from having casual Facebook Live chats with your wife in the car to now hosting all kinds of people. And I've seen some creatures and
Yeah.
CEOs for feature interviews in what's now a sponsored luxury car. So, what's the change been like for you?
I blessing would be, an understatement. Probably wouldn't be doing it justice. Yeah, I was blessed over the holidays back in December to secure that with North Park Lexus of San Antonio. And I was joking with somebody the other day. I said I spent roughly almost 30 years in the TV news business, and I had to leave the business to be able to drive a brand new Lexus. Like, how crazy does that sound? Um, and so yes, they've been amazing. Um, they put me in this beautiful electric car that's got what they call a dynamic sky. So I push a button on the overhead, and the skylight can go from clear glass, window, to an
Yep.
iridescent, like a frosted, skylight. And it's great because so much natural light comes in. That's another thing that I didn't want to do either. I didn't want to
Mhm.
fill the car with a bunch of lights and ring lights and microphones. It's one small ring light, one podcast, actually the microphone I'm using with you right now, and a sunshade if necessary, because I don't want the sun coming through the windshield and blinding anybody. But and then I think the car is absolutely stunning, and I'm forever eternally grateful to them for letting me have it.
I love it. And I love all those features that you can use very naturally. And if you all want to send a car my way, I'm happy to report record the next podcast series from it so we can certainly talk about that because you're right. What a great literally vehicle to have these conversations and be your studio on the go.
Well, I had to. The car I was using before that was my wife's SUV, and we have 3 teenagers, and so you can imagine what 3 teenagers can do to the interior of a car. And so, yeah, it would be crazy. I would take my kids to school, clean up all the crumbs and or the fingerprints and everything, and then I'd run to go do an episode and have, a city council member sitting in the front seat or whatever. And I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. And um, yeah, so the kids know, on the rare occasion that they're in that Lexus, we're not eating or doing anything crazy in the car, and we're going to take immaculate care of it and treat it. I mean, because it really is my office, it's my workspace, it's
Yeah.
my studio, and so no, the family's been great and supportive, and I'm uh, God willing, I'm going to keep on plugging away as long as I can doing these shows.
Yeah, I mean, think about that hustle, everyone. Like, you know what your car's like. I know what my car's like. It's not always washed and ready for clients to see. So having them inside of it, and you're talking at least, right, 20, 30 minutes. And
Right.
yeah, that's a lot of work, Ernie. So way to go on that.
No, I had the mayor in my car on Valentine's Day, and I said, I mean, this is like, he's probably one of the more public figures in San Antonio. I said, you know what, I think I took it that morning. I ran it to the car wash, and I vacuum it myself, and wipe it down and everything, because yeah, I mean, I want to make a good impression, and obviously, North Park Lexus has entrusted me with this, and I want to do good by them. I mean, you know what it's like to have sponsors, and
Mhm.
and you want to do right by them and represent their brand. So you're right. There's no question it's a grind. I mean, I used to wake up at 2:30 in the morning, and that was another level of craziness. But this is quite the hustle and quite the grind. But I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say, hey, North Park, it's been smart because I literally have seen someone go, "That's a really nice car. Tell me about this model,"
Right.
before
It's
they got
sure.
in it. So yeah,
Yeah.
nice natural right way to bring that in. And Ernie, you talked about even taking care of the car, washing it, and vacuuming it. But this is a hustle and a grind, but it's your hustle and grind. So in that kind of context, what's the best and then the worst part about creating and hosting your own show?
Well, that's easy in terms of the best. The best part is the quality of life. I have spent more quality awake time with my kids and my wife than I have in their entire life. My oldest is 18. She was 6 weeks old when I started doing the morning news. So for basically their entire lives, and my twins are 13, I was never home in the mornings, And I realized now looking back, when I was home in the afternoons and evenings, I was so tired, like sleepy, like exhausted,
Yeah.
and so maybe I wasn't as present as I would have liked to have been, or certainly didn't give much for a social life or anything like that, even on the weekends. And so that all changed when I was able to dictate my own schedule and book whoever I wanted to on my time, on their time, and work around taking them to get, like this week I took my twins to the dentist, and I got to run errands, and I can have breakfast with my wife, and I can go wash the car, or I can do all those things. I'm taking better care of myself, going to the doctor and just doing things, Melissa, that I quite honestly put off for so many years because I was probably either working or I was just so tired.
Yeah, that's a great point because if hearing where this all started from, like I was picking up my kids from school, then some who maybe work in an office job say, well, I can't even pick up my kids from school, right? So you had a good Ernie. Well, he was waking up at what, 2 a.m. or so? So by
2:30,
the
2:30 in the morning, yeah. And
yeah.
I mean, you do what you have to do because the way I looked at it was, well, I've got four people here at home to support. And then secondly, I said, you know what? I'm going to get out of work at 12 noon today. I'm not going to have traffic going to work. I'm going to get out and have the rest of my day. And on a Friday, get out of work at 12 noon every Friday. That's not too bad, but that was the best. Like I said, is the quality of life I have now. The worst is just that anxiety that you have by having your own business, if you will, or running your own thing, is that you wake up and you look at the bills and you look at the situation, you realize, okay, like we got to make this work. And summer's coming up, and the kids want to go on a trip, or unexpected expenses come up, and so you're just hustling and hustling. And the one thing that I'm learning now, or trying to work with now, and my wife is great at reminding me this, is okay, do your hustle, do your thing, but don't overexert yourself, and make sure that you still have time for family and yourself and everything else.
Yeah, those are some of the hardest parts of entrepreneurship at
Right.
any level is trying to figure out, well, you may get a little better personal life integration with your work life. From, my experience too. I mean, this is 9 years in for me that sometimes you feel that pressure to keep growing and be successful. And then all of a sudden you're realizing, wait a minute, I'm putting myself through the same kind of hoops that I had in my traditional employment job. And I,
Yeah.
I need to figure out a better way. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of calibration and recalibration throughout the process. So I honor what you're saying here because, yeah, the worst is that it's your anxiety, it's on you
Right.
to be successful all the way through. And, that's kind of the best and worst for me, Ernie. I don't know what you think about that, but I knew I could always trust myself to do the work.
Yeah.
So that's part that I kind of take some comfort in. But it's the things that we can't control around us, right? The economic uncertainties,
For
when
sure.
clients pay a little late, when something's just, an unexpected bill, or somebody in
Right.
our family gets an unexpected medical situation going on. So I think trying to control what we can and then continuing to try to have some perspective on, okay,
Yeah.
what parts am I making more stressful myself? That could be
Right.
helpful.
There's no question about it. And I mean, when I did the news, I mean, my wife will just tell you the same thing. I could never turn it off. I was either watching the news or I was on my phone. or I was reading websites, to stay up to date on everything that's happening. And because I felt like that was part of an obligation I had just to stay in the loop and stay in the know with everything. But I think you and I are from a generation and kind of maybe cut from a similar cloth that we work 8 days a week and 30 hours a day. Like we put in the extra work and we do a little extra. And I mean, I certainly have to be reminded sometimes to kind of keep that in check. And you just hope that someone will see the value in what you do. Listen, I mean, I certainly did not have this on my bingo card years ago. Make a career change at, I was 47 last year. And oh, by the way, I left the TV station with no job to go to. I mean, how crazy is that? With the now I have a senior in high school and twins in eighth grade, and she's getting ready to go to college in the fall. Like it's insanity, Melissa. Like it's just
Mhm.
it's not something that I would have been prone to do. People who know me well know I'm not a terrible risk taker or prone to make crazy midlife decisions like that. But I just came to a point where like you said earlier, you're sitting on these passion projects or these ideas, and you look around you and realize, okay, it's not happening. So I have to make it happen myself. And so
Yeah.
I went all in on myself. I mean, pardon the cliche or whatever. I went in all on myself. My wife, could not have been more supportive and continues to be. And that's all I needed. As long as she was cool, then I knew we were going to be okay. And truth be told, we are okay.
I love that. And I'm sure you're better than okay, Ernie. I know
I'm very
even
blessed.
you're better than
No,
okay.
you're you-
But
no, you're it. I am, and I say that because listen. I mean, I
yeah.
don't. I I'm not ashamed to say, last summer was very difficult for me. I had a really rough time, very privately, but just reconciling the decision I made, realizing that I had applied for dozens and dozens and dozens of jobs, and I could not pay somebody to call me back. I couldn't buy an interview. Like it just wasn't happening. And then you start to have a pity party and you wonder, what am I doing? Is it me? And what am I doing wrong? Like why isn't this happening? And I just remember getting that it's the two phone calls I talk about all the time that changed everything for me. And one of them was, you probably know my friend Cleto Rodriguez, the local comedian.
Yeah.
He called me one Saturday out of the blue and one to check on me and two to say that with pickup lines, Ernie, you have to do something with the show. You have a huge audience and it's a good show. You have to do something with it. So he gets credit for being really the first one that kind of kicked me in the pants and was like, all right, get up and let's do something with pickup lines. And then the second call was when I heard from Gomez Law Firm, and they were the first ones to really sponsor me in a major way. And when that happened, the other sponsors just started falling into place because I think people realized, okay, this is not just a weekend hobby show for fun Ernie's doing. Like this is his life. This is his full-time gig. And he's very serious about this. And those two calls changed everything for me. And again, so far, we've been, trending in the positive upward direction since then.
No, I think it's going to continue. Absolutely.
Thank
Because
you.
I see the organic growth. Even on the business side, we've been able to kind of take a look at, let me see your media kit and how does this work? And, you're very open to advice. You're very open to collaboration. That's a big part of this
Well,
is
you
that,
you
yeah,
have to be, Melissa. I mean, you know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But listen, I mean, I had to really kind of humble myself and take a really good look in the mirror because, like, you and I talked about media kits and stuff.
yeah.
What was it last summer? And the reality is, Melissa, I hadn't updated my resume since 2003. Like, I think it was on Windows 98 or something. Like, it was crazy. And the media kit I had was probably like I created graphics from like Netscape Navigator or something crazy. Like it was the most primitive, out of date stuff. And so I had to, yeah, with people help from people like you, I had to take a crash course in how do you get an LLC? How do you trademark things? How do you um, cross post on different platforms and pitching and Oh, and then the biggest one of all, which you can probably relate to, people ask me, "What's your rate?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I like, how do you come up with a number when someone's been paying you every 2 weeks for the last 30 years,
Yeah.
and you know exactly what you're gonna get, and you can budget around that, and then somebody asks you, like, an open-ended question like, "Well, what is your rate?" How do you come up with that number? I mean, I really wrestled with that for a long time last summer.
And I don't think you'll be done wrestling with that because as you hit new levels,
Yeah,
that should increase. But at the same time, you have to think about what the market will bear, what's
right.
going on with the economy in the market, what's happening in the region and nationally. Like I've noticed all these different levels of impact. So it's it's one part that you just have to accept about entrepreneurship or monetizing anything is that you have to look and do some research and ask and find some people who are willing to share information with you and say, look, well, this is about what would be doable from our experience. This is about the range of what
Mhm.
the value is seen in the
Right.
market for this, right? Especially around social where everyone wants the attention and they want to be on it, but they don't always value it in the same way financially as other channels. So I think it is tricky, but you're doing a good job of working with what you got and using some best practices and input and saying, okay, let's see how this stacks up for me and make the most of it. So it's a journey. And so I love that you're being candid about that because that's the part of entrepreneurship that you don't see on TV, right?
Oh
It
my
looks
gosh, yes.
sexy and we all have
Yes.
boats and we're all in our bathtub with, candles on and wine and making a call every 2 hours, but otherwise we're not working much. And it's like, no.
Right, right.
Um,
No, I will always be eternally grateful to my one of the benefits of being in the media for so long is I made so many great friends in public relations and communications. And I just said this publicly the other day. I mean, I have a lot of respect for PR professionals like yourself. It's a thankless job, and you don't always get the public credit that you probably deserve, and you're hustling at all hours of the day and everything. But I leaned on so many people like yourself and others in the community that were so gracious and gave me this free advice that's invaluable, and I'll always be grateful to those people, like I said, yourself included, who just saw something in what I was doing, and you know, you came to me without expecting anything in return, and that I will never forget that.
well, you're so welcome, Ernie. And I'll just be clear about why that is too. It wasn't just the show. You're good people. That's a phrase I use for folks that I just think have high moral character, are trustworthy, follow through on the things they say they're going to do. And you're my good people category. So good
Oh,
people should know good people. And, we got to help each other out. So I love that. And speaking of
thank you.
helping out, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. What kind of feedback are you getting from your audience? Because we want more people to be curious about your show. Are you noticing that different audiences have a different vibe in one medium or another? Or what's that like?
I just had this conversation with someone this morning. One thing that I kind of thought would happen, but I had no way of knowing how great it was going to be. I had a general on from Fort Sam Houston, General Evans, on my show like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I haven't looked at the numbers in a day or two, but the last time I checked, his episode is multiple times more watched than any other episode I've ever done. He's had more impressions and views, and I've heard from so many military people around the world
Wow.
that served with this man, and like already knew he was a great guy. But what I found out was there is an appetite, I believe, a strong appetite for military stories and just content. And so what I'm working on right now, my next on my to-do list is I'm trying to create a series of episodes with the military members that I can do on a recurring basis. I mean, this is something I want to do on a regular basis because I just off the top of my head, I know 4 or 5 military members they probably have a combined 200 years of military experience, and they all have unbelievable stories from different walks of life and everything. And that was one thing that really surprised me was just the outpouring of reaction, and that I heard from people with military ties from all over the country. And so that just reinforced what I already thought. And so I will, barring something unforeseen, I'd really sometime in the coming weeks or so or months, I really want to do a regular reoccurring military series with these people, and because they've obviously made so many sacrifices and served our country, but the stories that they have are just so remarkable. And I come at it from obviously a civilian, and I have never served, but I'm just fascinated sitting there listening to these people talk. I think it's great, and I hope to do it some more.
I love that. And that's probably the best recruiting tool the military could have. So listen in, military folks.
Thank you.
Because
I agree.
yeah, because it's really breaking down, humanizing, demystifying what it's like to serve and have gone through the adversity that they go through as people, as professionals, as service members. I think it's very complex, and there's some fear around it. I know that as a civilian myself, I don't understand a lot of what they go through and how they deal with it. So I'm sure that that human aspect of it probably really resonated with folks. And I think we all learn so much from stories, and that's what we
Yeah.
remember. So
Yeah.
it's really important. And if y'all didn't know, we are in San Antonio and it is Military City, USA.
Right.
So I think you're onto something, Ernie. Well, Ernie, we've had a great conversation. I know we need to wrap up so you can get back at it, but I want to ask you three last questions.
Sure.
You've already given us some really good insight about what it was like for you to kind of change with your career. But did you have any last pieces of advice for someone who may want or need to make a pivot in their own career?
You know, I would just say, go with your gut, and no regrets, and align yourself with people who believe in what you're doing. I mean, I had that, and I just can't imagine doing any of this without that support here at home. My dad, my mother's passed away, but my in-laws, just that circle, that inner circle, that everybody understood what was going on. And I mean, the kind of what the route that I took was just, picking the brains of people like yourself and maybe others. I spent a lot of time, Melissa, last summer having coffees and dinners with these were people who left TV news in this market and went on to do other things, whether it was PR. I talked to Emily Bauckham, who's running some PR stuff at the Alamo. Jim Lefko went to go work with Judge Peter Sakai. And Delane Matthew went into real estate. Randy Beamer's working at public television and doing other stuff. We spent untold hours just talking, and one person who did the same thing. She went into PR. She told me one night. She said, "Ride the wave. It's gonna be fine, and there is life after TV news." And I'll be darned, all of those people were exactly right. So that would be my advice to anybody who is maybe in a similar situation and ready to make a pivot. It's never too late to do it, and know that there's a lot of help out there if you need it.
Yeah, and I think you've done a good job in investing in people so that they were
Yeah.
ready and willing to help you. And so that's a big tip for everyone as well. Sometimes our jobs are so busy as PR and communication pros that, like, we're doing our best if we can just spend time in the cubicle and knock out the work.
Right.
But if you don't look up and make friends outside
Right.
that cube and outside of your organization, sometimes the lifeline you need is not there. So just want to underline that for people as well. Well, Ernie, kind of like you with pickup lines. Like I ran into this experience, which led me to this catchphrase for myself called Smart Talk.
Yeah.
And it's come up in a lot of different ways. It was first, actually, I don't know if I've told you all this, but Ernie, you're getting me talking. See? Smart Talk was the name that I used for a video interview series that I launched for my Public Relations Society of America San Antonio chapter here in 2020 when the pandemic hit, and I was their VP of Social Responsibility, and I wanted people to just calm down and think before
Right.
they did irrational things. And so we launched this using Zoom because, I had not used Zoom before. And I started doing interviews to kind of supplement and take the place of programming we were missing in our PR world because we couldn't come together anymore. But when that was over, I said, I really like that concept. And so I started the podcast. And then when I was writing my first book, the editor asked, why don't you use Smart Talk in the title? That seems to be really important to you. And it seems catchy. And I'm like, okay. All that context is the background. So I never shared that before. So I'm glad I did. But I want to ask you, what does Smart Talk mean to you?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of it is just kind of staying true to yourself, and just knowing that you just never know the impact something you say can have on someone. I tell my kids this all the time. You do something or say something today, you might have an impact on somebody 10, 20 years from now, and you won't know it until later in life. And so I've tried to always be hypersensitive about just kind of the optics and kind of my surroundings and everything, just being kind of a public figure, if you will. And obviously, for a living, I had to be careful what I said on the air, doing live television all those years. But I just think it's not getting away from the talking, the one-on-one conversation like what we're having right now, that you don't always have to have your head buried in the phone or on social media. And I tell my son all the time, you can text full words and not just emojis, and you can write a letter with a pen and paper sometimes, and you can handwrite a card when you want to send it to somebody. Those things, I just try not to get away from those kinds of things. So that's kind of my attitude, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. A lot of substance there.
Yeah.
So, Ernie, we want to support you. We want to see your show. What's the best way for listeners to connect with you?
Well, I really appreciate that. Right now, the best way would be to go to my Facebook page. It's the verified Facebook page because I do have two of them. One's personal, and then the other one is the one with the blue check mark that I'm wearing, like a shirt and a blazer on it. That's the page I've had going back to my news days, and so it's on there. But you can also see clips of the show on my LinkedIn page and my Instagram account, on my YouTube channel, and on Spotify if you search Pickup Lines. And on the other platforms, just look up my name, Ernie Zuniga, and you should be able to find it. But yeah, I'm all about helping each other out, and passing it or paying it forward, if you will. And so I just really appreciate everybody who has watched or listened or told somebody about the show, and people like you who've supported it. I really do appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you, Ernie, for sharing your knowledge with us today.
My pleasure.
Thanks to our listeners for joining me for today's episode. If you like Smart Talk and strategic comms, let's collaborate. You can work with me as a trainer, a consultant, or hire my firm, MVW Communications, for strategic comms planning or PR strategy services. My book, Smart Talk, Public Relations Essentials All Pros Should Know, is available on Amazon in print or audio and offers advice, how-to tips, tools, and new PR models so aspiring and practicing pros are equipped for this evolving field. Please follow and rate this podcast if you're a fan, and follow us at MVW to get the latest on trends, trainings, and more. And as always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.